Hello everybody, welcome back to Punk Write. My name is Smee. I am super excited that I have just finished the final copy edit to my book, SCARBOYS, and have sent it off to my editor. In that process, I learned quite a bit about my own storytelling and writing that really helped me get better. Stick around here on Punk Write to figure out what you can do to make your writing better in your line edits. Don't go anywhere. One of the things that really surprised me about the line editing process was the amount of time that it took me to do it. If you're interested in creating a story that is as clean and fluid as possible, you really need to pay special attention to detail and specifically to each sentence and how it serves in the construction of your story. This can be a little bit onerous and painful, and if you don't have an eye for detail, perhaps you might want to pass it on to someone else who can help you through that process. This is before you send it to your editor. Now, the line editing process is a little bit different than the developmental process because the developmental edit is looking for holistic details in your story. This process of copy editing is meant to be specified towards the grammar and the syntax of your language and also how it takes form in the larger aspect of your story. So I pulled a couple of the biggest points that I looked at in my own writing that maybe you'll find useful. Let's get right into it. Although the 5 points I'm going to lay out today are not exclusive, they're some of the key points that I find affect in my writing, but also in a lot of beta reads that I do. Point number 1 deals with the overuse of metaphors. I know that we are always encouraged to create vivid, graphic, and lively images, but the use of metaphors actually can have the opposite effect of that and detract from the clarity of what you're saying. Specifically if the metaphors you're using are either cliche or out of place with the story or the world that you're telling. One of the things in language that is the beauty of language is using imagery to be able to express an idea. But it's important to be careful with metaphors and figurative language in terms of overusing them or using them inappropriately. For example, if I look at this, this is from my own writing. His head was thick and the sounds entered it like it was a distant concert. One of the things I had to take into consideration is that the actual metaphor, the analogy, which is the same principle, fits within the world that I have built. Like was a distant concert is something that doesn't really correspond to this passage, and you'll only know that from your own writing. So take a look and make sure that it fits. Something simpler like his head was thick with the sounds around him is much cleaner, and it saves a few words as well. Another example, the world blurred and then fogged over in a dreamlike glaze, like a master switch had been thrown to cut off the pain that ran through his head. That's kind of long and winded, and you can say the same thing with a much clearer image without all of the figurative language. The world blurred in front of his eyes, his mind fogged over. Much cleaner. Be parsimonious with your metaphors, like Scrooge. Point number 2 deals with meaningless and gratuitous words. There is nothing wrong with overwriting, as long as you keep in mind that when you go back and do your line edit, you're looking to eliminate anything that detracts from the clarity of your sentence and the clarity of your story. This goes for adjectives, adverbs, but also simple phrases that seem to be cumbersome or jarring in terms of the clarity of your sentences. Paying attention to this is going to make you a better writer. As we all tend to in our writing, which is a good practice, we overwrite and we use too many words or expressions to be able to get through our story. That's not a problem as long as you understand that when you go through the editing process, you're going to go back and eliminate gratuitous and meaningless words. For example, he opened up himself to a complete and absolute acceptance of the transformation that enveloped him. That is just a wordy and cumbersome sentence. I can clean that up, save some words, make it much more concise and clear. He accepted the transformation that enveloped him. That is a much better piece of writing. He had heard enough, and Carl had known him long enough to know when his patience had run its limits. Again, there are quite a few extra words in there, and one of the things that I want to look at is just making sure that the idea or the essence that I want to express is the core element of that sentence. He had heard enough, and Carl knew when his patience had run its limits. Simple and clear. Richard looked askew at Lana through the morose silence, as if they did not believe in each other's existence. Had come to this. Well, that's a bit strange too, but let's look at the result. Richard looked askew at Lana, not believing their existence had come to this. Same idea, much more concise. The third one is not necessarily a pervasive problem, but it's something to pay attention to in how you create a style for yourself as an author. Primarily, you want to keep your language in a positive form. Negatives and double negatives can easily pop up, but if you eliminate any kind of negative language, you'll find that you're using positive senses of verbs, which is going to increase clarity in your writing. This is something that I wrote. The threat was not without precedent. So you can see that this is a negative word and this is also a negative word. I can say the exact same thing, and I've actually made this just a fragmented sentence because it's clean and clear. A threat with precedent. That is a much stronger idea. The exceptions to this are going to be something like a dialogue. And dialogue, of course, is representative of the character, so you can get away with double negatives. This is the negation, can't see, no one. It's a double negative, but it very clearly expresses who this character is, and therefore the dialogue is the exception. Point number 4 for me is the key to good writing, and that is focusing on the subject and the verb relationships in your sentences. Good sentences and clear writing and ideas are based on subjects and verbs. Don't get bound down by all of these other aspects of your sentences. Focus clearly on the subject and the action that is happening in your subject, mostly avoiding passive form, and you'll find that your writing is going to improve and be stronger. For example, in this sentence here, his face was beginning to bruise around the lacerations. This is a little bit problematic for me when I see was beginning, because that is a very passive way to say it. I can say something similar and stronger and make the focus the bruises. The bruises formed, subject, verb. And this is a very clear idea that is much stronger and preferred over the first. Looking at the second one as well, the most captivating thing about him, however, was that strange apparatus that he carried with him wherever he went. The strange apparatus has an important role in this sentence because that is the most attractive part. Make that the subject. The strange apparatus he carried with him wherever he went captivated us. The strange apparatus becomes the subject. Captivated is the verb. That is a very clear relationship. Point number 5 is a little bit ambiguous and doesn't really have any specificity about what it might look like in terms of writing, but it's something that you feel, and that is the idea of flow. Good writing, at any genre, at any level, is about fluidity and flow through the story. Anything that detracts from that flow is something that should call your attention and you should change. The best way to do this is to read your story aloud. If you get to a point where you feel like it's a bit cumbersome or jarring, that should be a red light that you should change something. Thanks for joining us here on Punk Write. I hope some of these aspects of line editing can help you improve your own writing. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the section below. And don't forget to like or subscribe if you're interested in more videos like these. Meanwhile, you know what to do. You just keep on writing. Punk Write.